Hello students, welcome to the video class. In today's class, let us learn about respiration. Look at this given image. What do you notice here? The person is exchanging the gases. The person is taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide to the surrounding. So, externally, there is exchange of gases. The oxygen which is taken in here reaches the blood, and in the blood oxygen is given and carbon dioxide is taken. So, respiration broadly means the exchange of gases. Plants and animals have different means of exchange of gases. In plants also you notice the exchange of gases through the stomata and through the roots. Here you are seeing the image of cellular respiration. So here internal respiration is taking place, that is inside the cells. At a cellular level, respiration means the burning of food and getting or generating energy that is needed for all the life process. So you can observe in this image oxygen and glucose enters the cell. Here glucose present in the cell with the help of oxygen. It generates energy and gives out carbon dioxide. So in this image we are able to understand what is meant by cellular respiration. So glucose gets oxidized and energy is released along with carbon dioxide. So this is the example for cellular respiration. Cellular respiration may take place in the presence or in the absence of oxygen. In some organism, it may occur in the presence of oxygen. In some, it may occur even in the absence of oxygen. So, such a type of respiration is called as cellular respiration. Respiration involves gaseous exchange. We all know this. We take in oxygen from the atmosphere and give out or release carbon dioxide. So, this process is termed as breathing. Breakdown of simple food in order to release energy occurs inside the cell. Not only just from the external surrounding, even inside our cell also special type of respiration occurs that releases energy and also helps in breakdown of food. Such a respiration is termed as cellular respiration. In this image you can observe how the cellular respiration is taking place. Breakdown of food is taking place and mitochondria is there which takes the oxygen and helps in giving out carbon dioxide and also helps in generating the energy, that is ATP molecule. One more image, both in plants and in animals. Plant cell and in animal cell, we notice this cellular respiration. Photosynthesis in plants and cellular respiration in animals that helps in generating ATP. Let us now learn the steps of respiration. Breaking down of glucose. Now in cell, what happens in the cell? First, the glucose enters the cell and it gets broken down. So glucose breaks into pyruvate. This step happens in the cytoplasm. Glucose molecule is broken down into pyruvate or pyruvic acid. Glucose molecule is composed of 6 carbon atom, while pyruvic acid is composed of 3 carbon atom. As the glucose enters the cell in the cytoplasm, it breaks down. 6 molecule glucose breaks down and give rise to 3 molecule pyruvate. Then what happens to the pyruvate? This is the next question. What is the fate of pyruvic acid? Further, breaking down of pyruvic acid takes place in mitochondria and the molecule form depends on the type of respiration in a particular organism. So based on that fate of pyruvic acid, To understand that, we can learn respiration as of two types: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is a type of respiration that occurs in the presence of oxygen. As the name itself indicates, aerobic, that occurs in the presence of oxygen. Here, what happens? Pyruvic acid. Just now we have learned. First, glucose converts to pyruvic acid. Then, in the presence of oxygen, in mitochondria, pyruvic acid is converted into carbon dioxide and energy is released. Carbon dioxide, water and energy is released. So, carbon dioxide, water is a byproduct, the final end product formed in aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration. This is a type of respiration. As the name itself indicates, it occurs in the absence of oxygen. So, pyruvic acid, which is present in the cytoplasm, now it gets converted into ethyl alcohol or lactic acid. When ethyl alcohol is formed, ethyl alcohol is usually formed in the case of anaerobic respiration in microbes like yeast or bacteria. And lactic acid is formed in some microbes as well as in some muscle cells. So this is what happens. Try to understand this. I have tried to write it in equation form. First, glucose breaks down to pyruvate. Glucose is 6 carbon molecule, but pyruvate is 3 carbon molecules. So glucose breaks down to pyruvate and releases energy. Then next, what happens to pyruvate? It depends on the organism or whether oxygen is present or not. So in yeast, where there is lack of oxygen, it gives rise to ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide and energy. Where there is absence of oxygen, here oxygen is completely absent. So then what happens in muscle cell? In lack of oxygen, lactic acid and energy is produced. In mitochondria, in the presence of oxygen, it gives carbon dioxide, water and energy. So these three are the important process under aerobic 1 and under anaerobic 2. So here you can see the first one is occurring in the presence of oxygen. Glucose gives carbon dioxide, water and energy. So this is happening in the presence of oxygen. Whereas in the absence of oxygen, glucose breaks down to pyruvate and pyruvate gives rise to ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. So here in the lack of oxygen, glucose breaks down to pyruvate and pyruvate gives rise to lactic acid and energy. So these are the three important things that you have to learn. Here again in the form of chart, it is very easy to learn. Glucose in cytoplasm breaks down to pyruvate. This is a common step. Then the fate of pyruvate depends whether it is absence of oxygen, lack of oxygen or presence of oxygen. Pyruvate in the presence of oxygen in mitochondria gives carbon dioxide, water and energy. If it is lack of oxygen in muscle cells, it gives rise to lactic acid and energy. In the absence of oxygen in yeast, it gives rise to ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Now let us understand the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration, it occurs in the presence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration, it occurs in the absence of oxygen. Aerobic respiration involves exchange of gases between organism and the outside environment. But under anaerobic respiration, exchange of gases is absent. Under aerobic respiration usually occurs in cytoplasm and mitochondria. As we know, the first step is common for all. It occurs in cytoplasm and continues with mitochondria. But anaerobic respiration, it occurs only in cytoplasm. Aerobic respiration, as an end product, it releases carbon dioxide and water with energy. But under anaerobic respiration, the end products may vary. In yeast and bacteria, it may be ethanol and energy, ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy, whereas in muscle cells, it can be lactic acid. So, as a result of aerobic respiration, how many ATPs are generated? 38 ATP, adenosine triphosphate, 38 energy currency ATP are generated as a result of aerobic respiration. But as a result of anaerobic respiration, we get only 2 ATP, 2 energy currencies, 2 energy molecules ATP. So these are the important difference between aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. This is one of the very important question from the examination point of view, children. Please try to understand this, do write and practice this. Exchange of gases. For aerobic respiration, organisms need a continuous supply of oxygen and carbon dioxide produced during the process needs to be removed from the body. Different organisms use different methods for the intake of oxygen and expulsion of carbon dioxide. One of the methods used here, especially in unicellular organism, is diffusion. What you are seeing in this image is a process called diffusion. That is movement of molecule from higher concentration to lower concentration. So simple organism, unicellular organism use this method of diffusion, process of diffusion for the purpose of exchange of gases. In plants also, diffusion process is utilized for exchange of gases. Look at this given image. What do you notice here? Yes, you can see the fish is taking oxygen with the flow of water and it is coming out with the help of gills. Here again in this insect you can observe the fine branches or structures called spiracles. It also contains the pores, air sacs are present and trachea, tracheoles are present. So, in complex animals, respiratory system does the job of exchange of gases. Here in the first image you have seen, gills are the respiratory organ for fishes. Fishes take in oxygen, dissolved oxygen through this gills. Since availability of oxygen is less in aquatic environment, so breathing rate of aquatic organism is faster because the availability of oxygen is less in aquatic environment. So the fishes breathe very fast. Breathing rate in aquatic organism is faster because the availability of oxygen is less there. Insects have a system of spiracles as you can see in this image. It has a system of spiracles and tracheae which is used for taking in oxygen. So these organisms take oxygen through this spiracles. What do you observe in this image? These are the animals. These are the examples for terrestrial organism. Horse, dog, cat, all these are terrestrial land animals, isn't it? Terrestrial organisms have developed lungs for exchange of gases. As you can easily notice in this image, these organisms develop lungs for the exchange of gases. Availability of oxygen is not a problem in terrestrial environment. So breathing rate is slower as compared to what it is in aquatic organism, fishes. Terrestrial organisms use atmospheric oxygen for respiration. Just let us imagine ourselves. We are terrestrial organism. We use the atmospheric oxygen for respiration, isn't it? In the same way, aquatic organisms like fishes use dissolved oxygen for respiration. This is the image. What can we understand from this? The human respiratory system. This is the image of a human respiratory system. It consists of a pair of lungs. These are attached to a system of tubes which open on the outside through the nostrils. Again, human respiratory system. From the nose, nostrils, lungs. Let us learn one by one. Following are the main structures in human respiratory system. The first one is the nostrils, which are present in the nose. As you all can just touch and feel that there are two nostrils which converge to form a nasal passage. The two nostrils converge and gives a nasal passage. The inner lining of the nostrils is lined by hair and remains wet due to mucus secretion. The mucus and the hair help in filtering the dust particles out from the inhaled air. Further, air is warmed up when it enters the nasal passage. So, it helps to trap the dust, the hairs and the mucus that is present in the lining of the nostril helps to trap the dust and germs that may accidentally pass when we inhale the air. So, this is the image of nostril, nasal passage. The next is the pharynx. After the nasal cavity, the next root is the pharynx. It is a tube-like structure as you can observe in this image. First is the nasal cavity, the next comes the pharynx. So it is a tube-like structure which continues after the nasal passage. Then after pharynx, the next one is the larynx. This part comes just after the pharynx. So the larynx helps to produce the voice. So it is also called as voice box. It is quite bulged as you can see here. It is a bulged portion and it is also called as voice box because the trachea that is present in the voice box, larynx, helps to produce the sound. Can you imagine what is this? Yes, this is the trachea. It is composed of rings of cartilage. You can observe in the image there are many rings of cartilage. So this cartilaginous rings prevents the collapse of trachea in the absence of air. The next root is the bronchi. After trachea, the next root or passage is the next tube which is continued is the bronchi. As you can see in this image, it is a branch diversion. Two branches are there. These are called as bronchi. So a pair of bronchi that comes out from your trachea with one bronchus going to each lung. So two bronchus are there. Each one bronchus reaches to enters the lungs, goes into the lung. The next is the bronchiole. Bronchi gives rise to bronchioles, which is a network-like structure, sub-branches, divides into branches and sub-branches inside the lung. As you can see, the network, branch, root-like structure here. So these are called as bronchioles. Then finally, at the end, there are balloon-like structures, round, small, balloon-like structures. These round, small, balloon-like structures are called as alveoli. So these are actually the air sacs at the end of the bronchioles. The alveolus is composed of very thin membrane and is the place where blood capillaries open. This is alveolus where the oxygen mixes with the blood and carbon dioxide exit from the blood. as just in the previous slide you have seen that exchange of gases. Oxygen is given to the blood and carbon dioxide is taken. That important function occurs here in the alveoli. As you can see here, notice the network of capillaries are present around the alveolus. The exchange of gases in alveoli take place due to the pressure differential. This is one more image which helps us to understand how the exchange of gases occurs throughout the respiratory tract and also very importantly between the alveoli and the blood vessels. So here let us try to understand now. If the oxygen enters the nostril, it passes through the nasal passage, reaches the nasal cavity, then passes to pharynx, goes to larynx, trachea, bronchi, which is present in lungs, then reaches the bronchioles, alveoli, and finally go to the alveoli, and there the exchange takes place in the blood capillaries. Dear children, let us now understand the breathing mechanism. The breathing mechanism of lungs is controlled by the diaphragm. You all know that there is a muscular diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. Intercostal muscles are there and there is a diaphragm. So these two assist in the breathing mechanism. The diaphragm is a membrane which separates the thoracic chamber from the abdominal chamber. The thoracic chamber and abdominal chamber or abdominal cavity is separated by this muscular partition or muscular membrane. We call it as diaphragm. As you can see here, this is a diaphragm. This separates the abdominal cavity and the thoracic cavity. When the diaphragm moves down, as you can see here, if the diaphragm moves down, the lungs expand and the air is inhaled, taken in. When the diaphragm moves up, the lungs contract and the air is exhaled, given out. Try to observe this. Diaphragm moves up, lungs expand, air is taken in. Diaphragm moves down, lungs contract and air is exhaled. This what happens. When the diaphragm moves up, ribs moves in, air moves out. When the diaphragm moves down, ribs move out, air moves in. Now let us understand this mechanism of breathing in two important things, that is inhalation and exhalation. We all know that inhaling or inhalation is the process of taking in of oxygen. Exhalation is giving out, exhaling, giving out of carbon dioxide. So during inhalation, what happens? The thoracic cavity or the chest cavity expands. Ribs lift upwards. Because the chest cavity expands, the ribs have to lift upward. The diaphragm becomes flat in shape. Volume of lungs increase and the air enters the lungs. So chest expands, ribs lift up, diaphragm flatten, volume of lungs increases and the air will enter the lungs. This all happens during inhalation. Now let us see what happens during exhalation. Thoracic cavity contracts, ribs move downward, diaphragm becomes dome shape, volume of lungs decreases and the air comes out from the lungs. So this is the two important mechanism, that is inhalation and exhalation mechanism of breathing. Thank you. Have a nice day.